John Rappoport here in the fourth hour at InfoWars. We all know that companies like, we're talking social media, Google have been shutting down people and changing listings and distorting all sorts of things. Why doesn't Google shut down the Washington Post? I mean, to me, that would be an obvious thing to do. Call me crazy. Why? Because the Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos, who owns Amazon. And Jeff Bezos has a contract through Amazon with the CIA, a little contract, $600 million, actually, to provide cloud computing services to the CIA. And we presume that once this contract is fulfilled, I would guess there'd be more. So that would mean, try to, get this through your skull here. This would mean that the owner of one of the biggest, most authoritative media outlets in the world has a very close personal business, money making, intimate relationship with the CIA. Wow. We've long known about the very tight, close relationships between the CIA and the Washington Post, right? But this takes it to a whole new level. So that should mean that every time the Washington Post mentions the CIA in an article or gets information from the CIA for an article and doesn't specifically mention the CIA, in either case, there should be a big disclaimer at the head of the article, right? I've mentioned this before. Come on. We at the Washington Post readily admit that our owner, Jeff Bezos, has a $600 million contract with the CIA, and therefore, this article should be taken with a tremendously large grain of salt because there's an inherent conflict of interest. Because when would we not believe what the CIA is telling us? When would we not take their information and run with it, since our boss has this intimate relationship with it? Thank you very much, and enjoy reading the article below. Come on. I mean, makes sense to me. This is reality. Let's have a dose of reality. Why not? And since that is the case, then why doesn't Google, you know, just say, from now on, we're not going to run any more Washington Post stories, especially when they have any connection to the CIA? Hey, if I were the head of Google, that's what I'd say. Okay, boys, reason I called you into the office today is because didn't we once have a motto, don't do evil, or don't don't be evil? Wasn't that Google's motto at the beginning when everything was fresh and beautiful and new and the internet was just starting out and it was wonderful? So we want to get back to that. And I, as your boss here at Google, uh, we're going to take a step in that direction. And so I'm directing you as of now that we are not going to run any more Washington Post stories that have any reference whatsoever to the CIA. Just erase them, knock them off, forget it. Okay? And in fact, I think we'll issue a press release about it because we want to be known as an ethical company, right? We don't want to mislead people. And while we're at it, somebody just handed me a little clip of a radio broadcast from some website. I don't even want to say what it was, but the citations seem to be real. That that FDA approved drugs kill 106,000 people a year in the United States, which is over 1 million people per decade. Wow. I did not know that. And so I, as the head of Google, have decided that we will now declare a moratorium on any ads that we have anything to do with that are for pharmaceutical drugs until we look into this. Okay. And we are going to delist all pharmaceutical companies for the time being. So we don't run any of their material either until we get to the bottom of this, because we don't want to be associated with killing. I mean, if we're not going to do evil, wouldn't you say that should be the case? Get what I'm saying here? So let's return to the main point of the show today, in my hour at least, which is the ads, the commercials for InfoWars products, because their company that sells their ads had decided, for obviously political reasons, not to sell these ads anymore. And millions of dollars of revenue for InfoWars just disappeared like that overnight. And that money needs to be replaced and renewed, even higher levels, because the whole point of the InfoWars operation is, again, the bottom line called freedom. Remember that word? Freedom. Freedom from, for example, globalism. So, here are the products at InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com that are being featured right now. Consider these news items and products to get, both for your own well-being and health and strength, and to support the cause of freedom at InfoWars. Super Male Vitality, 25% off. Brain Force Plus, 25% off. Survival Shield X2, 25% off. Contains super high quality nascent iodine. Caveman, True Paleo, a new product at InfoWars, 33% off. Silver Bullet Colloidal Silver, 33% off. And for those, mention it, InfoWars storable 3-month food supply. In any situation, 3 months supply. InfoWars storable 3 months food supply. Any person who buys that then automatically receives a free Alexa Pure water filter. InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com. Do it, okay? Do it. So there are so many of these contradictions here. And of course, they became apparent to me almost as soon as I got into the news business in 1982. And these contradictions that I'm talking about here motivated me to call my website No More Fake News in 2001, because it was clear to me that major media were the source of fake news. That's where you would go. If you want to find fake news, this is where you go, folks. And again, I mean, if I were in charge of the advertising department at these networks, CBS, NBC, and so forth, Washington Post, New York Times, that's the way I would advertise. That's just my quirk. But I would say we are the center for fake news. Get your fake news here every day. We will shield you from what is actually happening in the world. That would be my pitch. You know, and I think it might work better than their pitch, because if you haven't noticed, they are sinking into the sea. The New York Times just keeps on refinancing the financing of the debt. When I was a kid, everybody in my neighborhood got the New York Times on Sunday. And if you were of a certain lack of strength as a kid, you could hardly lift the paper. It was so heavy and so thick and so full of God knows what. And now, check out the Sunday Times. You know, could balance it on one finger, not a problem. What's been happening? They're going into the toilet. They just are. They can't sustain their operation. And they refuse to tell the truth about anything that people really want to know about, which would bring them back from the brink into the black again, from the red. They just won't do it. They absolutely won't do it. Let's see if I have another great example here. Well, the last time I was on, I spoke about the #1 U.S. mind control program at U.S. colleges being psychiatry because of a statistic. 25% of all college students in the U.S. last year were either diagnosed with a mental disorder or treated for a mental disorder. So U.S. colleges are now psychiatric clinics. And I went on to explain how psychiatry, chapter and verse, is a pseudoscience. It's fake science, all the way down the line, all the way down the line, to the proposition that some kind of a chemical brain imbalance is at the heart of all mental disorders. Totally refuted, just another urban myth, legend, and so on and so forth. They have no evidence to back it up, no proof, no anything. There is no defining diagnostic laboratory test for any of the 300 officially certified mental disorders. That's a story. If the New York Times wanted to pound on a story every day for a year until the criminals came out of the woodwork in the psychiatric profession began to confess en masse that they have been fronting for a toxic, highly dangerous drug operation called psychiatry based on no science whatsoever, would that be a Watergate? Hey, that would be a Watergate times 1,000. If you pounded on it long enough, and you got the confessions, and you got the government agencies and people inside the FDA saying, yeah, we knew it, and we just approved the drugs anyway, and so on and so forth. Scandal up to the sky. Selling papers on the street, New York Times, couldn't keep them on the rack. Could not keep them on the rack. Would not be able to. Will they ever print it and pound on it and expose it and dig down deep into it and drag these goblins out into the open and get them to confess and look into their devious, slimy backgrounds and just expose the guts, the steaming guts of the whole psychiatric operation? Of course not. Of course not. Of course not. Because all of these operations are interlocked. The medical cartel, the psychiatric branch of the medical cartel, the pharmaceutical industry, the advertising dollars, the major media, the 6 corporations that own the major media, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all of a piece. But they could resuscitate themselves. And InfoWars happens to be an example of living proof of an operation that came from zero into where it is today. All the way up and up and up and up and up. It can be done. It can be done without having to obfuscate and cover it all up. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm talking, I'm telling you. Nobody's stopping me from saying the medical system in the U.S. kills 225,000 people a year. Same citation, July 26, 2000, Journal of the American Medical Association. There it is, Barbara Starfield. That's 2.25 million people killed per decade. About 1 million from the FDA-approved drugs, and the rest from mistreatment and errors in hospitals. And nobody at the federal level is doing anything productive to fix that. Think of it. 3rd leading cause of death in the U.S. And these are all conservative estimates. I'm fully aware that other research has pinned these death figures higher. I'm giving you the mainstream conservative estimate. Imagine a podcast from the New York Times in which somebody like me would sit there and just say this, and I can prove it. And I'll give you some more studies to back it up. Can you imagine the roof would fly off the New York Times building? And then, that would make it a legitimate media operation for a few seconds. And then you would follow up by saying, and we're running a page one story on this tomorrow with a big banner headline. And we're going to pound on this story about medically caused death every day, every week for the next couple of years. And we're going to expose much more and name names and show you the people that have been covering all this up and the government agencies that have been covering it up and the hearings that never happened and the lies and the crimes and the threats of death. I can show you, don't have it in front of me, Martha Rosenberg, a very good medical reporter, interviewed an FDA drug reviewer, and I'm hoping I'm getting his name right, Ronald Kavanaugh. He reviewed pending drugs for the FDA, and he talked about being threatened if he didn't give a seal of approval, that he felt that his family's life was in danger, okay? Family's life, that sounds like the mob, doesn't it? Like a mob threat, like a mafia threat. So if the New York Times decides, well, we're just going to take this on, folks, hey, they'd have 100 million views on their podcast every day as they probe deeper and deeper and deeper into this. They would become a legitimate media operation, not fake news. It's pretty simple, the formula for success. You tell the truth, and then you tell the truth. And then you tell the truth again, and then you tell deeper truth, and you go deeper and deeper and deeper. That's what you do. We're going to take a break and come back with our last segment. John Rappoport sitting in at no more fake news. Infowars.com.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say, see, I told you so, that communist Chinese-style net censorship was coming to the web, because it's already here. It's being announced. The way you keep the internet open and free is you get involved more than ever. Go to Infowars.com/app. A new battleship in the fight. Infowars Live, available right now. We're looking for a crew to man it. You gonna sit down and play games and be a trendy? Or are you gonna be part of history? Don't sit by and let the internet and free speech be stolen from you. Take action.